One is Monte Carlo Sweaters and Woodland. Everybody's heard of both of them?
Yes.
Monte Carlo Sweater, everybody knows. If tomorrow Monte Carlo Sweaters were to launch a brand of underwear, you think it could successfully launch it? No. If it were to launch a range of saris, do you think it could successfully launch it? Why? Because Monte Carlo has positioned itself as a sweater company, implying wool, implying winter, implying for a particular reason. It is very limited, it's very boxed in. Their inclusion ability is low. It can't include other things. Look at Woodlands. Woodland makes shoes, but today Woodland makes sweaters also. They make jackets, they make belts, they make a million other things. Woodland never positioned itself as a shoe company, it positioned itself as a rugged company, an outdoorsy company, a tough company, and therefore it can make all brands that can have outdoors and ruggedness associated with it. Okay. So that's what we mean by inclusion ability of a brand. Sometimes brands limit themselves, sometimes brands have a large amount of inclusion ability. Okay. Let's look at creating a brand. Now we talked about branding. So defining and getting right the position is the first really difficult step. And as entrepreneurs, we must take the time out to think about this. Followed by communicating into the world, as you asked. But I'm saying, but that's for a different talk, right? So I think I'm at the critical point when I hand over to Ashton. Yeah. What we're going to do now is, I'm going to keep quiet. I'm going to sit down over there, and Ashton is going to continue talking. And this session is going to be more interactive. So anybody needs more paper, now is a good time to come and get it.
I think you were going to give an example of Livon.
Yes. You asked me, what are the question? Two equivalent brands, differently positioned, one works, one doesn't work. Very good. Okay, so Livon was positioned as a brand for, so while they're doing all this, can I answer a question? It was positioned as a brand for women because it prevented tangling. It was a detangler. Because tangled hair, when you comb it, breaks. And hair breakage includes hair loss, which is tragic for a woman. No woman can handle the whole notion of hair fall. Okay? When Livon looked at hair fall as the problem, women said, hair fall hota hai because it's your diet, God-given big problem. But if Livon said, you lose hair because it breaks and falls off, every woman stood up and said, hey, I understand that, because when I comb after a shampoo, my hair gets tangled and I can't run my comb through it, it breaks, I lose hair. Livon came to existence as a detangler. Again, I'm giving this as an example, it's from our work where we were studying non-shampoo products. Okay? Detangler, Livon, extremely successful product, first one of its kind. Very quickly, Marico came up with a product called Silky and Shine. Silk and Shine. Identical product. What they positioned it as, because your hair will not break, and they didn't say it will not break, you will have fantastic hair. You will have hair that is shiny and lustrous. And it failed. It failed because of a number of reasons. Shiny and lustrous was not what they were promising. That every shampoo promises also. So there was nothing unique about the product. It failed right there and there itself. Secondly, because it was designed to be a detangler, it actually never did silking and shining. So same identical products, both thought through by big companies, intelligent people, but one took the tack which had the greatest relevance for the consumer, the other one took a tack which had relevance but not unique relevance, because even a shampoo did that. Yeah. And where is my co-speaker? Yeah, all yours.
Hi. How many people found the exercise Recipe did to be a little difficult? Anyone? Was it difficult to do? Okay. So that's the reason this second session I have broken it down into how you should be thinking to arrive at the positioning statement that Recipe was talking about. Okay. So you'll go through this thinking element and then you'll see how what you've worked on right now is different from what it is after this whole thinking process. Alright. So let's look at all this from different eyes. What we need is 9 sheets of paper. Ideally, I don't think any of us have 9 sheets of paper, but the idea was to have one thought on one paper, So you have them in front of you, so then you can come up with a positioning statement. So you can probably do this at home. Okay? And an open mind. Okay, and what I've done is I've put down two ways of thinking, because in order to think differently, you first have to start thinking differently. And there are two interesting techniques. One is opposite thinking. What do? Whatever is asked of you, you think the exact opposite of. Alright? So this will give you a different perspective on what is going on. It will give you a different set of ideas. Okay, and the second thing is thinking in a language that you're not familiar with. Okay, I know these are little airy-fairy sounding things, but why you do this is because if you're not familiar with in that particular language, you're using lesser words, you're thinking more clearly than you would in your primary language. So for me, I don't understand Marathi so well, so I probably start trying to think in Marathi or trying to think in French. Hindi and English are okay with. So think about what language you are not so comfortable with and try thinking in that language. Okay? Try it as an experiment. Let's see how it works out. Okay. So as we said, the most important thing, know your product. Right? As entrepreneurs, we only think of a few things with regards to our product: quality, cost, speed of manufacturing, and building inefficiencies. Right? As entrepreneurs, we make products because we can. We design and make products for primarily the production perspective, and that's, I'm sure all of you have thought about this in this context. Websites, I will make a website that doesn't go down. I will make a website that loads quickly. Right? But as enlightened entrepreneurs, we must think about our product from the consumer's perspective. In order to position yourself, you need to first know how you are. Your product could be is this shaking a lot? Can you, nobody's feeling dizzy or anything? Your product could, on the face of it, be something very simple with this very simple purpose. However, for different people, it could mean different things and have different uses or solve a unique problem. Okay? So for example, look at SUVs, cars. For a bachelor, it could be a sign of power and dominance. But an SUV for a father could be a way to protect his family. It's the same product. They're all buying the same thing. They're all buying a Honda CR-V or a Toyota Fortuner. But one is macho, the other one is protection. The product is the same. The person using it is looking at it differently. The person using it is thinking about it differently. Each of these different ways to look at your product are called dimensions. Okay? So to dimensionalize a brand or product is to list out all the various benefits, uses, forms, perceptions. However you would hold that particular product in your mind, okay? That is called dimensionalizing. Significantly, dimensions can be negative also. So it's not just positive thoughts or positive ways of holding a product. These dimensions will be used later to arrive at positioning possibilities. Okay? So you can break down your product the way you are classically breaking it down, okay? By net going down, or for example, maybe second-hand products, I will make it extremely sanitary. There are different ways of looking at your product, but what are the benefits, what are the uses, what are the forms of that product? That is important. Those are the dimensions.
How do you define difference between benefits and uses?
Benefits in the sense, what is it adding to me? And uses is how I can use it in different multiple ways. Okay. When you're dimensionalizing, there will be things that overlap. Okay, but the important thing is how clearly you can think about them. And that's the biggest challenge as entrepreneurs, because we have so many ideas and so many thoughts. We're having a shower and suddenly a new thought comes in our mind. Right? How do we put all these thoughts down together? That's the purpose of this. So to clearize and crystallize the way you're thinking. So for example, dimensionalizing thumbs up, you can probably say it's macho, it's strong, it's black, it's gassy, it's been around for a long time, it's a thirst quencher. After eating non-veg food, you know, how many times people say, after non-veg food, thumbs up. Okay. Good for digestion, can buy for the family, Akshay Kumar. There are multiple ways that you're actually looking at this product. The multiple ways you're looking at this brand. Okay, so these are called dimension or dimensionalizing your brand. So what do you do now on your paper? Take your brand, take your product, okay, and dimensionalize it. How would you describe it to someone? But in words. Don't write long sentences. It is this. My product is this. My product benefit is this. As many dimensions as you can think of. How much time do we have? Half an hour?
Yeah, total. I just go to the wall to find out that. If you want to give 1 minute for doing each. No, that's fine.
Alright, you have about 1 or 2 minutes, so make the most of it, write down as many dimensions as you can.
Is it?
The important thing is that your product can be an actual physical product, it can be a website, it can be a service, it can be anything. These rules apply to any form of product that you're making. And if two of you belong to the same company, don't do this exercise together, do it separately and then compare notes later on. It will be richer. Yeah, done? Need more time? Alright. So, know your product. Okay? The next thing is to know your competition. Alright? It is you and there is a whole bunch of people out there. Right? What is your competition currently? Let's look at that. As entrepreneurs, we all know our products very well. But how well do we know our competition? Right? In order to position ourselves in the consumer's mind, we need to first know how our competition has been positioned. What level of importance does it enjoy in that person's life? Okay. Even though you are going to be in a place that doesn't have competition right now, we will soon see that everything that you will do actually technically has competition. Okay. So how is that positioned in the person's mind? How are people thinking about that? That is very important. Significantly, your competition can take on many forms. It can be a product like yours, so Coke and Pepsi, same. Or a product that is very different from yours but occupies the same space, Coke and Distillery. Okay? Both could be thirst quenchers, but they're different. Or your competition could not be a product at all. So competition for Move is sleeping at night. Okay, I have a back pain, I won't do anything, I'll go to sleep in the morning, when I wake up, back pain is gone. So that is your competition. What are you fighting? You need to know. Like this, there may be many other things that could give the same benefit or do the same things as your product. Okay. So car dustbins, what is your biggest competition? The road. Okay. You need to think like that. You need to think out of the box. What is my competition? It's that little plastic bag that you hang on the headrest. It's that little handle that you have on the side of your door. What is my competition? Positioning is about differentiating yourself from this competition. So in order to know how you are different, first you need to know who your competition is, then position yourself differently from everybody else. Okay. So the next exercise, okay, alright, this is almost right. So competition for Move could be Iodex, which is a balm, Amrutanjan, which is a balm, Release Spray, which is in a spray form, so the product form has changed, Lep, home remedy, you know those little potlies that you put on your back. surgery, high pain threshold, so the consumer itself could have its own competition, like, you know, my pain's thick, I'll bear it. Okay? And your last would be sleep. So look at the kind of competition that Move is playing with. It's not just playing against Amrutanjan or not playing against Iodex. So now, next, write down who do you think your competition is. What is currently satisfying this need that you are also satisfying? Make as big a list as possible. It can be brands, it can be products, it can be thoughts. Ask questions. If anyone wants to share what they're writing down, go ahead and do that.
Two collaborators can be competitors, right?
Sorry?
Competitive collaborators, also competitors in a way. I mean, the people who are collaborating, and if they are in the same industry, they are going to be competitors.
Sure, they can be. Are they satisfying the same need that is there?
The important issue over here is that your competition is not necessarily an equivalent product. It could be another way of thinking about the problem. That could be your competition. I think Ashton's example of Move and Sleep is a very powerful example. The biggest competition to Move is the fact that I'm not going to use Move. That's the biggest competition. Competition doesn't mean I will use another product. It only just means why I will not use you. Think of competition as in an inspired manner. Competition doesn't mean another product. It just also means why I won't use you. That's competition.
What is the biggest competition for watching hockey on TV? Newspaper the next day. Okay. Because I don't really want to watch the match, I want to see what happened in it. And that's all the newspaper is going to tell me about. So it can be something as strange as that. Are you all thinking about this in a different way from what you are normally used to thinking about it? Are you all doing those two thinking exercises? Is someone thinking in German? The important thing is not to just know who your competition is, but how it's positioned as well. So, Iodex is positioned now as sport pain relief. So, if I've injured my ankle while playing football, use Iodex. Amrutanjan is home remedy, lots of Ayurvedic kind of principles. So, the positioning of each of these products is different as well. Think about it that way. Alright, there are a lot of pens down, so we'll continue.
Yeah.
The next thing is to know your consumer. A fantastic product which is no use to the consumer will fail. A bad product which is invaluable to the consumer will survive and thrive. And this is the reality of life. No matter how bad something is, but if you need it, you need it. There's no two ways about it. Remember, you are in business only for and because of the consumer, no one else. Hence, it becomes imperative to know your consumer. Who is he? What is his family life like? What are his dreams? What is motivation, wants, desires? What does he do? Is your consumer the person buying the product, or is your consumer the one using your product? I think we had a big discussion when Whiskey was talking about. Okay, Bonvita for mothers, Bonvita for the kids. what I'm asking you all to do is make a crystal clear image of who your consumer is. Okay? Crystal clear to the extent of he will have long hair, he will wear jeans, he will not wear shirts. Doesn't matter. Get into that crystal clear of definition. Not right now. There's I think a lot more coming up about the consumer. Okay. Let's look at some common mistakes made. My product is for everyone. Okay. Number of times entrepreneurs come and say my product is for everyone. No. If your product is for everyone, then you are nothing for no one because you're not targeting a particular person. Okay. But my product is for consumers and corporates. Okay. So how do I target both of them? Okay. The answer is you target both of them differently. You have a particular kind of positioning for a consumer, you have a particular kind of positioning for a corporate. And the challenge is how you differentiate the two. The consumer is someone like me or like my friends. Okay, as you were saying right now. My consumer is not me, my consumer is not my sister. The number of times corporates make mistakes like this, okay, because they fail to understand who the consumer is, who is the person actually buying the product and using the product. Understanding their life, okay, that is very important, that is very critical. Okay, I don't need to know my consumer because I have a great product. Okay. Having a great product does not mean it will sell. Okay. Having a fantastic product and getting excited about it doesn't mean that it's going to sell unless your consumer gets excited about it. Okay. So what I have asked you.
Slide, please. Yes. This one.
Okay. These are just some of the examples. You can obviously define the person a little better. Okay. What I want you to do is, I want you to identify one kind of consumer. Okay. So your consumer may be someone from the age group of 19 to 50. Think about who your core target group is. Who's going to use your product the most? Who's going to use your product the maximum? And then define that person. Define that person as sharply as you can, right down to what you think are his motivations. What do you think does he think about life? Is he married? Is he not married? Okay. How does he treat his wife at home? Strange things. Write down as much and as detailed as you can, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with anything to do with your product.
But sir, this will be more of perceiving the customer than the reality.
Yeah, because you all haven't actually gone out and done research, or you all haven't gone out and actually met the customer. For those who have gone and met the customer, I'm sure it'll be clear in your mind. But this is your perception of who your customer is right now. It has nothing necessarily to do with reality, as you pointed out. It's just defining the target group in your mind, correct?
End up defining yourself.
Sorry?
Something. When you start writing about yourself, maybe if you do this exercise, maybe
Is your consumer people like you? You would love to think that, but in reality, do you think your consumers are people like you? It's a very important shift that you have to make in your mind. Sure.
Does the consumer need to be one image or could be like multiple images? Like 3 profiles in my head.
There are multiple profiles in your head, but is there a core to this person? Or are they extremely unique?
All students.
Okay. If there is a core thought or a core belief or a core idea that runs through all of them, okay, then you define the core. If they are unique, then you define who you think is going to be the largest target audience. And your consumers can take different avatars. So for example, for my company, we are a consumer knowledge company. So when we go and meet clients, we have to think about the client's brand. But we also have to think about the brand manager who we're dealing with. Because the brand manager we're dealing with is actually the consumer as well. What are his hopes, his aspirations, his dreams? Creating success for him is important, okay, as well as creating success for the brand. So you wear different hats, you have different positioning for both. Is this a little more difficult than the previous two? Easier? What have you written as your consumer?
So, college educated, internet savvy, between the age groups of 20 to 40, working, generally is afraid of doing things wrong or is generally honest. Wants a great lifestyle, wants a car, wants a good house.
Okay. Male, female?
Doesn't matter. Wants a better life or a better
Okay.
That's sort of
Can you add more layers to that?
yeah.
Okay. Can you add detail to that picture? Because because the important thing is the more details you have, the better you'll be able to hold this consumer in your mind, the better you'll be able to interact with this kind of a person.
But this I've been thinking for a while. The other stuff I want to
Yeah, this stuff is difficult.
No, it was more difficult because I've been thinking about this for a while. So.
Good. Alright, let's continue. The next thing is to identify your consumer's needs. You've identified your consumer, you've identified who this consumer is, but now you have to identify his needs. Okay? His needs, the most important needs are the ones that pertain to your product. Okay? What is it that your product, your service, your website is going to be satisfying? Those are the first needs that you'll address. But then you get into the more subtle ones. What are the needs that exist in his family life? What are the needs that exist in his professional life? Okay? So let's look at this. A consumer's needs, wants, desires can be broken up into many kinds. Satisfied, okay? Needs that are satisfied by products or things already. Unsatisfied needs. A realized need that has not been satisfied. So I know that I have a need, okay, but there's nothing that is currently satisfying. A latent need. What is a latent need? A realized need or a want that is present but not very important. Okay? So मेरे पास need है, मगर it's not that important. I'm not going to be motivated to go out and get something. Okay? It's in there. And the last one is an unrealized need. A need exists, but they're not fully aware about it. Once they're made conscious of it, it becomes an unsatisfied need. Okay? So what is it? You know that the consumer needs something, but the consumer doesn't know he needs something. So as soon as you tell the consumer that now there is a need for you, the consumer immediately thinks, I need this. Okay? What's an example for this? Live on. Okay? Hair breakage was a need, but hair breaking while combing your hair was an unrealized need because they didn't know that they were breaking the hair every time they combed their hair. As soon as Live On made women conscious about it, they wanted the product. Okay. So each kind of need has its own difficulty to address. Satisfied need, it's easy because communicating benefits of a product vis-a-vis the need is simple because people already know about these needs. Okay. It's difficult because something is already satisfying the need, so your product has to be better or cheaper or different in order to satisfy that need. Okay, so this is a little more difficult, but the consumer already knows that this need exists. The next is an unsatisfied need. Okay, this is the easiest to satisfy, but very hard to come by because as soon as a need is felt, the consumer would find a way to satisfy it. Okay, there are many things that you would think about that I need. There are very few things that you will say I need but are not being satisfied. Alright? So this is an example of that. A latent need. Again easy to communicate about but difficult because it's not an urgent need. How do you make it urgent? That is the communication task at hand. each kind of need has its own level. Sorry. Right. The unrealized need. The toughest to communicate, but the highest